It is time to challenge the psycho and socio-political models of control. For too long now, individuals have been overly pathologized and told they are mentally ill, damaged, and diseased. The mental health industry has been co-opted and captured by the state apparatus. The field of psychiatry, psychology, and psychotherapy and counseling has become molar, rigid, and stratified in its approaches and institutions. Now is the time to carve a new line of becoming, a path of rhizomatic growth based in artistic expression of self, cognitive narratives of beauty, empowerment, truth, and love. You are not sick. You are not broken. You are not mentally damaged or ill. You are beauty. You are truth. You are love and light, and simply need to find space to tune into your holistic potential. We collectively must actively challenge systematic and authoritarian models of psychoanalysis and fight to rehumanize ourselves and help one another find liberation in our collective mental spaces and psyche. It is time to create more healing, sacred spaces, both internally and externally, for a new world of therapeutic becoming. It is time to construct increased cultures of creation and exploration, radical, revolutionary spaces of growth and freedom. We are always in the process of becoming animal, becoming nomadic, becoming imperceptible. Together, we can deterritorialize and escape the confines of the state apparatus. We will reclaim our humanity and find new ways of being and new lines of flight. We will obtain freedom for self and our community at large. In the pivotal text, Going Crazy, The Radical Therapy of R.D. Laing and Others, James S. Gordon writes, R.D. Laing sees rigid diagnostic and psychodynamic ways of regarding people as a perpetuation, through the verbal and conceptual means of psychiatry, of the same dehumanizing attitudes which precipitated their emotional dilemmas. He points out that the language of psychiatric description is a vocabulary of denigration. People who behave and speak in a way that the psychiatrist cannot understand are said to be maladaptive, out of contact with reality, lacking in insight. The psychiatrist sees the patient through a filter of diagnostic criteria, which do violence to a two-sided interpersonal situation. The patient is reduced to an organism to be dissected, the psychiatrist to a judgmental anatomist. Disturbing lineage and history of psychology and psychiatry is revealed time and time again with a continual dehumanization of individuals, placing them into categorization and boxes which identify a symptomology and a pathology rather than seeing the experiences and complex multiplicity that the individual human has worked and walked through. Critical and anti-authoritarian psychologists such as Dr. Lucy Johnstone, Dr. Joanna Moncrief, and Dr. Bruce Alexander have done tedious and incredible work on looking at ways that dehumanizing individuals in our psychiatric and psychological system continues to fail, allowing them to not be seen as empowered human beings, but rather merely as their diagnoses and description. Dr. Lucy Johnstone writes, "Until we are able to use our own words to tell our own stories, the context we find ourselves in this case the psychiatric system, says our stories for us, and it usually gets it wrong. In the context of the medical model, the story we learn to say is that we are all ill. We begin to see ourselves as ill. We tell stories of illness, and the psychiatric system, and by extension, society accepts illness as the story of our distress. Being able to tell our own story, not the illness story, sets a new social context, one in which mad people are seen in a new light. In part, healing happens in the retelling of our stories. A new non-diagnostic approach is needed, along with offering the public and profession new understandings so that they can make better choices when it comes to mental health interventions. Dr. Johnstone's new framework, the Power Threat Meaning Framework, sets out to address psychological and emotional distress issues, restoring the link between what's happened in someone's life and the resulting ways in which we attempt to conceptualize, survive, and move through it. As Dr. Johnstone asserts, we shouldn't be asking what's wrong with you, we should be asking what happened to you. This framework moves away from medicalization and the assumption that we can understand emotional distress in the same way we can understand physical health problems. Instead, Dr. Johnstone's new framework explores the relationship between events in our lives, their meaning, and our responses. It looks into the root causes of distress and suffering, both within people's lives and relationships, and even further back in our social norms, social inequality, and social injustice of all kinds. We want to restore the sense of agency that diagnosis deprives people of, explains Dr. Johnstone. But we also want to put distress in the context of their lives. It's a fine line. Any approach that's too individualistic runs the risk of implicitly blaming the person. Critical and important to remember that suffering, distress, pain, and different adversity and challenges in the human experience are very real, tangible, and occurring. However, how we conceptualize, understand, sit with, and hold these experiences has a drastic change in how we feel and move through them. We must begin to see that we are not broken, sick, disordered, ill, or that there is anything inherently wrong with us. Rather, we must begin to look at the inner internal empowerment that we hold, recognizing the vitality and resilience of the human spirit, our ability to move through the world and understand ourselves in a multiplistic, woven tapestry that looks at biology, psychology, sociocultural, developmental, spiritual, and all of the facets that make us the beautiful and unique diamonds that we are as human beings. For in the end, whatever you are struggling with, whatever challenge, pain, difficulty, symptomology, you are not alone, and you can move through this world in a healthy and empowered way where you can find vision, meaning, purpose, connection, simplicity, and peace at the core of your existence. We must remember, you are not sick, you are not broken, you are not damaged. You are love, you are connected and woven into the fabric of existence. It is time for psychology to recognize the power of the internal belief system and the power of how we story our lives and the framework that we give to them.